Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, Polly, it's for your sake alone. I left my dear old father, my country, and my home. I left my dear old mother to weep and to mourn. I am a rebel soldier and far from my home. It's grape shot and musket and the cannon lumber loud. There's many a mangled body, the blanket for their shroud. There's many a mangled body left on the fields alone. I am a rebel soldier and far from my home.
Okay, thanks for joining me today in the broadcast, folks. It is the 15th day of January, 2021. Appreciate you coming here with me on the show live from Kalispell, Montana. We are broadcasting under the critical disclosure banner today because even though it's not technically a CPS family court show, we wanted to open up the opportunity for phone calls later on with Ron. We're gonna spend a full 2-hour show here today with Ron Gibson. We're gonna be talking about common law, the stuff that's been going around a lot lately about what's perhaps coming here in this country. The corporation seems to be bankrupt from all the reports that I'm getting, which is good for the average folks because the corporation, the corporate structure that's been running this country is not a friend of you or me. I can tell you that much. As I stated, we do have Ron Gibson here on the broadcast. Please like the video, share the video around if you can. We're gonna break it down. And folks, I would suggest, I humbly submit that you would probably need to grab a pen and a piece of paper and get ready to take some notes because when Ron speaks, it's like a college education. You're getting a college education, stuff that they would never teach you in school, is what you're going to be finding out here about today, about what the real law is and about really who you are. We've covered some of this stuff before, but we have lots of new listeners that are tuning in, and this is a this is a topic that I think people want to know more about. And as a quick side note, we've reported on Montana Daily Gazette yesterday. It looks about an hour or so after we reported it, the news came out that President Trump is going to declassify all of the Obamagate documents apparently today, and that is going to be a bomb that's going to be dropped on the establishment because they're all crooks, and they're going to be found out as crooks, hopefully today or tomorrow, or by Monday. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring Ron Gibson here on the show. Let me give Ron a proper introduction, and then I will bring him on the broadcast with us. Joining me once again is Ron Gibson. He's a former U.S. Marine and Vietnam veteran who currently works as a professional consultant, counselor at law, with over 48 years experience on the subject of land patents, mining law, right-of-way, contracts, water rights, and constitutional law. Ron was raised on a ranch in southern Oregon, and he had an education in engineering and constitutional law. Having a cattle ranching and mineral background has helped him to tackle many of the issues facing rural America today. Ron has several gold and industrial mineral projects in the western U.S. He currently serves as vice president of the Southwest Oregon Mining Association and is the chairman of the Jefferson Mining District located in southern Oregon. A licensed pilot, Ron has designed a helicopter and is the inventor of 2 environmental cleanup products. Additionally, he is also involved in turbine engines, marine powerboat plants, and turbine propulsion projects for helicopters and airplanes. His love of history and lifelong experience in cattle and horses has also served him well in his land, hay, alfalfa, and high-quality beef operations. In his spare time, Ron enjoys collectible auto restoration, raising quarter horses and paint horses, flying and teaching classes on constitutional law, mining law, and land patents. And if you've been on the show with us before, if you've tuned in before, you're very familiar with my next guest, Ron Gibson, and we're delighted to have Ron here on the show. And this live button here is, there we go. That should work now. Ron, Ron Gibson, thanks so much for joining us here on the broadcast. We appreciate you, brother.
Well, good morning, Jim. Thank you for allowing me to be on. Pardon me.
It's always a pleasure, Ron. Always a pleasure. You always dishing out some great information. You and I both have the same desire, really, to just educate the folks, if you will, and put out as much truth as we can to educate people and let them know that they have a lot more power than they really think they do. And we're helping them, hopefully, motivating them to exercise that power. You know what Ron says. Although he's certainly got it all on track, and he's very aware of what's going on, and he lays out the truth, as I stated, every time he comes on. It still comes down to you, the person. You have to act. Ron, myself, President Trump, can't do it for you. You still have to be the person that does the acting. When I say that, I mean you have to act on act on your rights. Ron, I'm going to go ahead and let's do this. Thanks again for being here. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk. We got 2 hours here, so we're going to try and maybe take some calls later as well. We got a lot of time to cover stuff. What I'd like to do is the state that we've heard here. We have reports from someone that you and I both mutually know. We won't say who. That the United States corporation has been bankrupt. We are moving back to organic or common law. We're going to have a fair court system, a fair election system, a fair government. That is the direction that I'm understanding that we're moving in. First of all, Ron, I know that I'm just going to ask you your viewpoint on this. Do you believe that those reports, A, are true, and B, don't you think it's about time that we threw off these chains of tyranny that have been weighing on us our entire lives? It's about time that we take our country back. That's my viewpoint. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Ron, and let you explore that further. Ron Gibson.
Well, Jim, you've hit on some pretty key points that a lot of us in America are dealing with. Well, everyone's dealing with it, but it just depends on what capacity that you want to point your finger. But I personally see an awakening, if I can call it that, because I think that's what it is. The American people, in and through this so-called impeachment and all of the shenanigans that the FBI has been involved with years, and all the stuff that Pelosi has been touting, and the far left radical. I think it's really important that the people, and I'm going to say it, I can get pretty brass when I need to, but we better wake up in this country, and I think we are beginning to wake up. My prayer is that it's not too late. But the turmoil that we have in our country comes from basically one facet predominantly, and that's the radical left. They do nothing that is productive for our country. They certainly don't give a damn about the people of this country, but it's predicated upon an agenda. Now, very seldom are agendas productive. There are some, there have been in the past, and hopefully that there are agendas that may be forthcoming that are beneficial, both to the country and to the people. Because if the people don't benefit, then that agenda is absolutely detriment. I don't care of what title that you put on it. And we're looking right now of the full-faced, two-barreled shotgun, cannon, whatever term you want to put on it, of losing our liberty in this country. It is that close. And the betrayal, and I'm going to call it just what it is, the betrayal of Trump relative to this impeachment thing there last Wednesday, week ago, yesterday, shows the true color of exactly where we stand. And I'm going to say this, and I'm not ashamed to say it. It saddens my heart to say it. But the very fact that our government, as it stands, for the most part, is a criminal enterprise. It functions under the Administrative Procedures Act, which Congress had no authority to implement back in June 11, 1946. And what that did, for those of you who do not know or understand, that literally circumvented the Constitution. It circumvented the law of God, the law of the land, if you please. It circumvented common law, and it positioned us supposedly to be under the jurisdiction of a corporation. That's not what our Constitution was designed for, and so we've lollygagged along, and now we've come to the point of we may end up losing it all. And Trump has been trying his best, of which to bring the power back to the people.
Ron, I'm gonna.
But this is really. Go ahead.
No, please finish.
No, I was just going to say, this is really not, in one sense, a Republican-Democrat issue. It is a national issue having to do with the liberty or the losing of it of the American people. And so, go ahead.
Well, on that point, Ron, I'm not sure if you've seen the resolution coming out of New York, where they are basically stating they're trying to pass a law right now that, based upon the governor's determination, they can pull you out of your house if they deem you to be a harm to, health-wise, to a harm to others or a harm to the community, or, are you ready for this, a potential health risk to others or the community. They are trying to pass a law where they're allowed to come into your house and basically sequester you into a FEMA camp type setup at a local school, auditorium, different, whatever facilities that they have available. And they laid it all out. I reported on it yesterday. What's your thoughts, Ron, as a constitutional lawyer, about the notion that the governor can make a proclamation that allows someone to come into your domicile and take you away against your will and basically imprison you without due process? I got to believe that has to... go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you just validated the point that I was trying to make a little earlier. That's how close we are to losing our liberty. And I want to share a little quick story, if I may, to kind of illustrate my point. When I was in Vietnam, I was in charge of a 12-man construction platoon. And it was my job to build a road from Da Nang all the way to the DMZ, the border between North and South Vietnam. And in the course of that, we stopped one day for lunch, decadent dining, I call it. C rations in the morning, C rations at noon, C rations at night. That's the food to eat. And as we're about finished up, I got the most eerie feeling that we were being watched. And to make a long story short, pretty soon a young boy stuck his head out of the bamboo about 30 yards up the hill from us. And so we waited a little while, and pretty soon I motioned him to come forward and to see if he had any type of explosive or weapon on him or whatever. And he got closer, and I had him turn around. So anyway, we had about a 10-minute conversation, and then pretty soon I told him we had to go. So I walked down the hill, and I got to my cat, and I laid my rifle up on the fender, and that boy came running at me as hard as he could run. And I thought, oh, God, I said, I hope I don't have to shoot that boy. I didn't know if he had a hidden explosive or whatever on the thing. And it was evident that he didn't, at least that I could tell. But that young boy ran up to me and he grabbed me by the utilities, and they got these big pockets on the side with both hands, and he's pulling and he's jerking and he's shoving as hard as he could. And I kept saying, what do you want? And he could speak relatively good English. And he's pulling back and forth. And I asked him a second time, I said, what do you want? And that young boy stopped pulling on my utility, and he looked up at me. He's probably 9, 10, 11 years old. And he said, someday I go to America and I be free like you. And I'm telling you, folks, I lost it. I broke into tears. I thought, God, this is why we're here. The people that have been in bondage for 500 years and still fighting, trying to be free. I'm telling you, that's liable to happen right here, folks. We better take a stand. There's no old saying, you better take a stand for something today or tomorrow you fall for anything. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that we have a whole boatload, if I can use that analogy, of betrayers and treasonists in our country, within our border, and predominantly that occupy the seats of so-called government. Now, I've studied the Constitution for many, many years. That's my schooling. That's my training. And our laws that are set up to deal with people who are treasonous are to go before a military tribunal with a trial, and if they're found guilty, they can face the death penalty. And if people think that we're going to solve this problem by sitting around and complaining and pointing fingers and all of that, you are sadly mistaken, folks. This snake is biting us every turn of the road, so to speak. And we had better take a firm stand and start arresting these people, and that's what Trump is trying to accomplish, is the very fact to get these people out of our government. Because if you've noticed, the radical left, things don't get better, they get worse. And as this incident last Wednesday, they confiscated 20 laptop computers of the people of Congress. And what they found on that was startling. They have found that Comey, who is the director of the FBI, had sold to China the computer mechanism that affects these computer systems that alter the votes. The former head of the FBI did this behind everybody's back. On Pelosi's laptop computer, they found that she was negotiating between General Electric, or Dynamic, a sub-corporation of General Electric that builds the most powerful, sophisticated jet engine in the world, and China. And she was to get a huge commission off of that sale. That's called collaborating with the enemy. That's a treasonous act, subject to be put to death. And unless we start implementing that process, and I even hate to say this, folks, because I want to give everybody the greatest benefit of the doubt that I can, but we have come to the point in history to whether we had better take that kind of a stand and start putting these people on trial in a military court where it belongs. That's not a civilian court issue. And start doing away with these people that are perpetrating things behind our back to the detriment of the American people and America itself, and for future generations from here on.
Ron,
and yet we sit around and we do nothing. Yes.
Let me ask you a question. If, there's been reports that President Trump has instituted the Insurrection Act, would they have to necessarily let the folks know if they did that? I mean, some of these things can be done, and I'm sure for tactical purposes. There's no reason, why even announce it on the mainstream media? They're nothing but a bunch of liars and scoundrels anyway. If they do, if President Trump indeed did institute the Insurrection Act and there are arrests going on, I find it odd. I saw a report yesterday that 20,000 troops are going to be down in Washington, D.C., National Guard, for a virtual inauguration that is, I don't even know if it's going to happen. They've postponed, apparently the Biden camp, the fraudulent Biden, president-elect, they've postponed their Sunday preliminary test for the inauguration because of security issues, with 20,000 National Guard and everything fenced off in Washington, D.C. What do you think's really going on, Ron? We've been talking for a long time about, you've been seeing in the news about arrests are going to be made. These people's crimes are going to be revealed. Apparently this morning, and then, I haven't checked since we've been doing the show, but President Trump everything's been declassified. He's going to start releasing information about Obamagate today. Do you think this could be it, Ron? Do you think that we could actually be, it's it's one of those things where we're on the precipice, but that's when we can, we can snatch, victory from the jaws of defeat, if you know what I mean. Do you think we're at that point right now, Ron? I mean, where are we at right now as a country, with the troops in Washington, with the inauguration coming up? Everything's going on with the 6th as far as the Antifa. Where are we at? How would you assess where we're at right now?
Well, that's an excellent question, Jim. And I have some very good contacts that have got pretty reliable information that the Insurrection Act has in fact been signed. It's not mandatory that the president divulge exactly when that's to be implemented. That's at his total discretion. Trump has allowed the radical left to show their true colors. It was intended to do that very thing for the purpose of showing the American people the corruptness of what he was addressing in his 2015 and 2016 campaign about the term when he said he was going to drain the swamp. The swamp is relative to the corruption in government. And you saw last Wednesday what happened. There were only 8 people that voted against impeaching President Trump. They can't implement it, but they did it for political reasons to try to cast a shadow that he's guilty of something. What that man has accomplished in the last 4 years is phenomenal. He has fulfilled every promise that he made, and he's in the process of draining that swamp. And there are a lot of people going to disagree with me on that and totally disagree with President Trump on it. But we better make up our mind of the fact, do you want a tyrannical government to dominate you? Because you're going to lose all your freedom, folks. Let me tell you. I've seen communism and what it can do when I was in Vietnam. I've read history, and I'm an avid history student about the nations of history that have fallen to a tyrannical government. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes that I can't divulge at this point. But the point that I can tell you that don't count Trump out. Let me put it that way. Don't count him out.
Is the United States as we know it, Ron, that we've all been, grew up living under, is that bankrupt? Is it your impression that
Yes.
that it's bankrupt?
Yes. It's been bankrupt. It's gone bankrupt 3 different times. And it also, I want to mention too, that the United States Inc. Corporation, the government, that or so-called government that we've been functioning under, is also defunct. And that was in July 4th of this last summer. So there is no seat for Biden to occupy as a president of the United States, Inc. The congressmen and senators that were elected, there is no official seat for them to seat in, to be seated in, and that's what they call it, the seat of government. We're going back. The attempt of Trump is to get us back to a constitutional republic and a money system that's based upon gold rather than a fiat currency that people are losing their homes over in foreclosure and all of that. All of those, that's a whole other subject. But all these foreclosures are unlawful as they can get. I've done an enormous amount of study on that subject matter. The banks don't loan you anything. But to get back to your point, we are trying to, President Trump and his leadership and the things that he has done and is doing was for the purpose of getting our constitutional republic back and give the power back to the people. I don't know how many of you folks know, but there are 3 words in our Constitution that says it all. We the people. When the Commonwealth of Delaware received the Constitution for signature, they added those words. Because what that caused is that you and I and every American are kings of our land collectively about this nation. That's why politicians have no lawful authority of which to claim any dominion over us. And I want to share a court case with you, your listeners. It's called City of Dallas versus Mitchell. And in that case, the court said something extremely profound and true. And the court said, and I quote, "Our rights don't come from government. Our rights come from our Creator. And we are not subject to government rules and laws and etc. Unless we volunteer to be subject to that." See, all of the administrative process since 1946 has been on the basis of contract. The Constitution allows us an unlimited right of contract. Well, if that means that we have an unlimited right to contract, we also have an unlimited right not to contract. And people don't look at it in that context, but that's true. We are the kings of our land. That's the reason that I got so heavily involved in land patents. The land patent is your only true title of your land. Your warranty deed's not a title. It's what's called in law a color of title. And that title is an allodial title. You can find it on page 5 of my land patent book that I wrote. You can also find it on the internet by going to the General Land Office report dated 1870 on page 28 and 29. It shows there that all patents issued are allodial. When you receive an allodial title, you're the king of your land. And so collectively, under we the people, we're kings of our land collectively, which means we have the power. And my question, folks, why aren't we using it? And if we're kings, we better start acting like it. If you want to be a slave, then you keep a distance away from me. I don't want to be a slave, and I'm not going to be a slave.
Ron, we hear 1871. That date has come up, during the course of these conversations. That's when things changed. I think that was another bankruptcy, if I remember correctly. I know there was some international bankers, I think, that came in and took over. I say take over. I think we had to get a loan, and it obligated us to some things. And I don't pretend to be an expert at that. I know that you're such way more well versed on that than I. There's been some key dates, as I said, that came up. 1871 has been one of them. Can you flesh that out a little bit for us, Ron? What happened back then in 1871?
You bet.
Please go right ahead.
Yes. What the enactment that's called the Act of 1871, when Congress unlawfully, Congress has done a lot of blunderous things that are in violation of the Constitution, but they implemented the Act of 1871, which made the United States government and Washington, D.C. a federal corporation. Did you catch that? Made it a federal corporation rather than a sovereign government. And as a result of that and the evolution of all of the attempt that corporation is to get all the states under a corporate designation, and that's what they've done. And Oregon was one of the last to convert over to they're called territorial corporations. We no longer have sovereign states. We have territorial corporations, which means that the governing body within that boundary is no longer a sovereign, which means that it's controlled and run by the people. Now it's controlled and run by a corporation. And unless you're a party to that corporation, you're not subject to its rules and regulations. And that's what statutes and codes are. Statutes and codes are not law. They are corporate rules and bylaws and policies and principles and all of that, and portraying that they're a government. And we, the people, for the most part, have swallowed that hook, line, and sinker. And so that's what happened in 1871, Jim.
Well, we're not. This isn't a financial show. We're not trying to give financial advice, but I do get questions from people, Ron, that say, "Hey, what happens if we go back to natural law, and the corporation that we've been under, like you stated, is bankrupt? What happens to my money if we go to a gold standard? What happens to the money that I have in my stock market? What happens to the money that I have in my bank? Am I going to lose all that? Should I take all my money out?" And I just can't believe, personally, I wouldn't think anyway, because there'd be worldwide revolution, that they would switch the monetary system and flush out all the wealth that anybody that that really worked hard and genuinely accumulated wealth before the switch. I can't believe they would flush all that cash down and leave these people impoverished that have worked their whole lives to save and have a retirement account and that type of thing. I don't see, Ron, I don't know the answer, and you may not either, but my gut tells me that they're not just going to flush everybody's wealth away and a new monetary system backed by gold. I think you'll still be able to have a like amount of wealth or money, really be money, because of what we're using now is currency. What's your thoughts on that, Ron? How do you have any idea how you think that might play out?
Yes, I've been involved in numerous in-depth conversation with people that even know a whole lot more about this subject than I do, and I don't claim to be an expert in that. But what I have been told is that your money that you have now, or so-called money, which is nothing but a debt instrument, will be converted over to a treasury bill. The new money will actually come out of the Treasury of the United States, will go back to real money, and it will be backed by gold. And it's kind of interesting because in the raid on the Vatican, for all of the child trafficking and all of the satanic sacrifices and all the stuff that's gone on for years and years and years, when they arrested the Pope, what they found was 123 miles of gold bullion that the Vatican had been storing for several hundred years, and that was then transferred to a very secure location here in the United States. So if we get back to a constitutional republic, there are going to be some changes, but people need not, at least from what I've been told and understand in my study, to panic. That's what we don't need, because people have to have money to live. So if you wanted to really blow everything up, take all their wealth away from them, you'd see a revolt in this country like none other. But that's not what's intended at all. It's to convert that over to treasury bills that have true value to it, because all the money you got stuffed in your bank or in your mattress or your closet or a shoebox, whatever you want to define it as, is not money at all. It's a debt instrument, and you can't pay a debt with a debt. That's the reason that the American people are so much upside down, because of that very principle. So
yeah, it's a Federal
that's
Reserve
what's
note.
intended to come down.
Yeah, it's a Federal Reserve note. I mean, the very first dollar that's printed and is loaned out has to be paid back with interest. Well, if you only print $1, it's got to be paid back with interest. How do you? Where's the money from? Where's the money from the interest come from? There's no funds available for the interest. I mean, my point being is, the whole system is a fraud. The whole entire monetary system is a paper monetary system. With you talked about fiat money created out of thin air, basically, and with no financial backing. So I think that's going to assuage a lot of people's fears, Ron, about the monetary thing, because I think that concerns some people. What is, in your view, what is life going to be like living under common law? I mean, it's going to be because we've been so far removed from it. I don't know now, 150 years, perhaps. What is it going to be? I mean, no one here that's alive now has ever lived under a common law. United States under common law. No one alive has ever lived under that structure before. What is it going to look like? And give me a couple examples if I can. I'm gonna lay this out for you. When you go to register your vehicle, what's gonna look like? What if you want to go to the local pond and go fishing? What's that gonna look like? What about when it comes down to your employment? Are you gonna have to fill out all these forms and tax forms and all that stuff? Is that gonna continue? What is life gonna be like for the average person? Because I think it's gonna be a drastic change to what we're used to now. Because really, basically, we've all complied to be slaves without really knowing it. I mean, we don't even really know we've signed on to the system, and we really are slaves. And I think we're really going to see just how big really the con has been once the truth comes out and we start living under common law. I think you contrast that to how we're living now, and we've been under slavery since birth. How's common law going to look, Ron, in the country practically on a day-to-day level? How do you think it's going to shake out?
My golly, to cover all of that, it'd take me a 2-day seminar.
Oh, not all of it. Not all of it. Just hit the high points. Just hit the day-to-day stuff, like, when people go, like I said, fill out job applications, they go to work. When it comes time, tax time, what time, permits, when they have to get their car registered. Just kind of give us an overview. I know we don't have all the answers. We're just going to touch on some of them here.
Well, let me touch on that, because you asked some very, very good points that you're bringing up. But let's start from the legal side of it, the lawful side, not legal, but lawful side of it. Let me tell you how common law works. Common law is that you have freedom to do with your land as you please, as long as you're not putting the public health, safety, and welfare in jeopardy. Other than that, you do with your land what you choose to do with your land, because you're the king of your land and you're the owner of your land. Okay? Now, let me give you a prime example. The way the system is set up today, you have a person over on his property and he's doing this or that, and the next door neighbor doesn't like it. So what he does is he goes to the code enforcement people, which is a corporation, and said, I want you to go out there and harass him and stop him from doing that. I don't like the fence that he's putting up. And I'm just giving you an example. And so the code enforcement guy jumps in his vehicle and he roars out to this person and said, we've had a complaint. And the property owner says, who complained? Well, I can't tell you that. But we have a complaint about this car that you have sitting in your yard here, and they don't like your fence that you're building, whatever. There's no provision under common law for that to be the case. If you, in fact, are hurting a neighbor, then that neighbor has a recourse, and it's called a court, to go to the court, not to the code enforcement people. And the beautiful thing about a common law court is the fact that you better be able to prove your claim, not just make an assertion. In other words, a claim that somebody is damaging you. And it cuts out 90% of the court cases that we now face in our country. It will change dramatically the structure of the police department and take them back to peace officers rather than law enforcement. Our police forces are terribly ill-trained. Takes 5 guys to take a man down. If they're properly trained, 1 man can take 5 guys down. And it's easy to shoot somebody rather than to defuse a situation. We had an incident of that here just a while back. Police officer shot this kid right in the back. That kind of stuff is absolutely not to be tolerated because it is an improper training, both in the physical training and the emotional training about how peace officers should deal with the public.
You know, Ron, let me touch on that.
They're supposed to be
let me touch. Sorry to cut you off. Let me touch on that for a second. Sorry to cut you off there, brother. But it used to be a point where, you know, the police officer would walk down the street and the neighbors would know him and they'd stop and talk and they'd be a friend of the community. And then it kind of turned over to like an us against them mentality where they sort of became militarized. And you know, I know it had something to do with the drug, you know, the whole drug war on drugs. And, you know, I mean, we can have another conversation about the CIA being the biggest drug runners in the whole entire world and dumping that stuff on the street and causing some of this some of the issues that we have. But that's another topic altogether. But we've switched from police officers in a lot of sense being parts of the community and helpful to be like, it's us against them. It's like we're automatically, I got a guy on here, Joe Bannister's a friend of mine, former IRS agent, Joe Bannister, who was in the movie Freedom to Fascism with Aaron Russo, that Aaron Russo did. He said he had to actually quit the Secret Service because he'd sit around the lunchroom and these guys would have this mentality of, well, you know, everybody's out to cheat and everybody's out to try to pull a fraud. And it's almost like they convicted the Americans, they convicted them before they even showed up at the house. They had already assumed that they were enemies and they were bad. It wasn't a presumption of innocence. It was we're gonna go apprehend the guilty because our supervisor said he's guilty. Ron, that's all got to change, brother. We're never going to be great again if the police can come in and do no-knock warrants, red flag laws, CPS can come and kidnap your children without due process. All that's got to end for us to be great again, in my view. That and many other things. Any comments on that, Ron Gibson?
Well, that's exactly the point that I'm making, is that the policemen, when they changed the designation of a peace officer to law enforcement, that meant to deal with things with compassion and understanding. Now, there are times they got to use force. There's no question about that. But the very fact that now they militarized them, and that was Obama's big thing, trying to create a private army, because he had ulterior motives about what is to be done with this country and the American people. The same thing with the coroner. The coroner used to be called the coroner, that had tremendous power to investigate, to arrest, etc., etc. Now they call him a medical examiner and put his authority under the state police. Well, they just gutted his ability to get to the truth about criminal activity and deaths and all of that kind of stuff. It's really tragic, because the court system has to change, and I kind of want to walk the people through the point I'm trying to make here. We have to have judges that, in fact, are common law judges. In other words, a common law judge, unlike the judges we have now, a common law judge has to abide by the law and to protect your rights and your property. The judges in our courts today, under administrative jurisdiction, so-called jurisdiction, but nevertheless, you don't have any rights. They're not going to protect your rights. They have no intention, because they want this total discretion from the bench. And then you wonder why you go to court and you lose. and you go to court and you lose. You go to court and you lose. You're never intended to win in an administrative court because it's set up for the benefit of the state. The whole program of the Administrative Procedures Act was for the benefit of the state at the cost of the American people, both in their rights and loss of their rights and loss of their money. It's a money revenue game that's criminal by its design. And I'm sorry to even say that or have to say that, but it's a fact. And when you don't have a moral judge, you have no judge. You have a tyrannical individual that's imposing adverse onto the people.
Well, Ron,
and God warns and warns and warns about that issue. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, if you're talking common law, if you're talking common law judges, then that I don't think the common law judge and the judge that's a member of the American Bar Association, I don't think they can coexist together. Am I wrong on that? Can the American?
No, you're absolutely right. There will be no bar. In fact, the bar, as we know it, is being phased out, totally being phased out, simply because it's a detriment to national security. Many of the problems that we have that have been infiltrated into the radical left has come from the Bar Association. I do a law class on that, and the title of that class that I do is Why Attorneys Are Not Lawyers. Lawyers and attorneys are not one and the same. So don't ever call an attorney a lawyer because he's not. Their philosophy, their action, their guidelines are 180 degrees separated from each other.
And
so,
and folks, I would recommend. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just going to say, an attorney, if there isn't a controversy, he'll figure out a way to make a controversy. And why? So that he can benefit and also be an aid to the state. Why do you suppose that 99% of the laws that are passed, or so-called laws, in every state come from the Bar Association? Once the legislation is passed, it then goes here, at least in Oregon, is a three-attorney panel that revise it. They'll change a comma here, they'll move the period over there, they'll rephrase it so that what comes out as a final version under the revised statute is not the same thing that the legislation passed on the state level. It's done all for the benefit of the state at your and I's expense. And that's the kind of horse crap that goes on that the American people don't have a clue that that's going on. That's why it's called a revised statute. You know, and you hear the term, oh boy, we're going to enforce the rule of law. And every time I hear that saying, it makes me want to throw up. What they're saying, so that you folks know, they're using a law, a rule, and perpetrating it and treating it as its law. It is not law. It's a corporate rules and regulations that they're trying to jam down your throat or pick your pocket or kick you out of your home and on and on and on. The tax issue is another thing. This whole tax thing has gone totally off the board. Land patents were never to be taxed, and they're still in full force and effect. But our criminal so-called government doesn't want to recognize that. And we got a lawsuit here locally with a good friend of mine putting a deal together over that very issue. There is no constitutional provision for what's called an ad valorem tax. And an ad valorem tax simply means a direct tax on your property. There are legitimate taxes, but they're called excise taxes. And the people here in this country, for the most part, 99 and 9/10% of them are not taxpayers from the Internal Revenue stuff.
That's true. That's true.
And boy, I could go on and on and on and on these subjects. But the point I'm trying to help your listeners to understand, things are not as being portrayed. And Trump's been working his heart out and putting up with this garbage for the last 4 years, when in fact he's done nothing to try to help the American people and the jobs that he's created, and cut China off at the knees on the foreign trade, and on and on and on it goes. It's amazing what that man has been able to do in spite of the adversity from the radical left. Think what would happen if the left then would say, hey, let's do everything we can for the betterment of the America and the American people. We would shock the world.
Well,
no, they've got a separate.
There's people on the right that are scoundrels as well, Ron. And I know you're right. It's a left-right paradigm. Go ahead.
That was proven last Wednesday. That very thing was proven last Wednesday, when in fact Vice President Pence, let me tell you how the government works. He has the power, but he did not exercise it, of which he could have thrown out every bit of the questionable votes that in fact that were implemented by the 5 or 7 states, whatever the total number was. He betrayed our country. He betrayed his constitutional oath. He betrayed President Trump. The same thing with the Supreme Court. Here a month ago, when the state of Texas brought the lawsuit and 5 other states joined in the lawsuit about all of the corruption in the voting. The Supreme Court has a fiduciary and constitutional duty to hear that case. And yet John Roberts persuaded them not to. You know why? Because they've got dirty laundry on him. They've got dirty laundry on Pence. All of these people that voted against Trump, they're bought. We don't like to admit that, but they are. They're bought. That's how they got in office, and they have got caught in a compromise that they've been set up. A lot of them got compromised on their own doing, and that's the level that we're having to deal with in our so-called government. That's what Trump said. We got to get rid of that or it's going to kill us. And that's what's happening. And we're teetering on the edge, folks, of falling into tyranny forever. And if you think that's a nice ride, you're in for a big shock.
Oh, it's not a nice ride.
That's what that young boy was trying to tell me, pulling on my pant leg.
No, it's
we
not
have
a
been
nice
the
ride.
light of the world for freedom. Go ahead.
No, it's not a nice ride. No. As I was saying, no, it's not. No one wants this. No one wants this. Right after President Trump got inaugurated, not very long after, there was a government shutdown, and I want to say like 750,000 employees were on furlough while they went through this gymnastics, this fraudulent gymnastics in the Congress to open the government back up again. But my point being is there was about 750,000 people, I think, roughly, government employees that didn't have jobs. And frankly, it never really affected me at all. I didn't even notice it. Do you think if we get back to common law, all of the people that you see, all these positions that have been set up in cities and governments and counties to continue to perpetuate the administrative law, are these people going to be without jobs? Are these people going to be? I mean, they're not going to. I mean, when you break away from the tyranny, the tyrannical overlords and the oppression of the administrative state, when you break that grip, won't that also come with fewer employees, and people won't have jobs because we won't be under the tyranny anymore? You get where I'm coming from? Do you see there's a big? Go ahead. How are they going to deal with that, Ron? I guess my question is, any thoughts?
Well, then that's a very good question, Jim, but it's real simple. They will have a job, but it won't be in the same capacity. They'll have to work in the private sector because under common law, the government's going to have to shrink dramatically to function as a constitutional republic. And all of these agencies and even if some of them are kept, and some of them will be kept, but they will be much smaller in personnel and cost to the American people. If you go look at the American budget every year, it'll make you want to throw up. They gave the American people here a week ago week and a half ago, whatever it's been, $600, and yet they give billions of dollars to countries who are our enemies. Hello? What's wrong with that picture? Trump said, no, give the American people $2,000. They fought him tooth and toenail on that. Now the Democrats are claiming, boy, we need to pass legislation of which give the people $2,000. Well, why didn't you vote for it when Trump was suggesting it? And I'm just saying that it's an old military saying that is so very true. This is called mind over matter. They don't mind, and you and I don't matter. And boy, that's evident because that's what they're doing. Everything is to the detriment of the American people. There's no reason that we should be struggling as we are. Some families have to have 2 or 3 jobs. The husband and the wife have to both work to make ends meet. All of that can change in just a very short period of time if people will stand up and demand a constitutional republic, because that's what our country was founded on. The Constitution guarantees it. Every state constitution guarantees. My question, where is it? Why are we dealing with what we're dealing with if we're guaranteed it? So there again, they violated their oath. And that's another thing that's going to have to change. We've got to have a mechanism in this country of which to discipline our elected officials when they step out of line. And I mean severe. And voting them out of the office is not the answer, because they can do all the damage between now and when they're voted out that you and I have to live with.
No,
there needs to be a review board. Go ahead.
Yeah, violating your constitutional oath should be a crime. It should be a crime that you should be charged for. Right, but I mean one that is enforced. 2 years or whatever it is, 1 year, whatever it is, there has to be some sort of a hammer that falls down, because you see how they're acting in some of the police are acting in some of these cities, where I don't know if you saw in Washington D.C., Ron, when they had during the 6th I saw a video where one of the cops took a bar and put it across the door at a hotel in Washington, basically keeping people inside the hotel, like they couldn't leave because they implemented a curfew. So they took a metal rod or some sort of a, I don't know if it was one of those things for the for the aisles, where those the ropes. I don't know what it was, but you should see them sticking it in between the door handle to keep it locked from people coming out. There has to be a whole culture change. There has to be a whole paradigm shift, because these people are not going to want to give up their power. Ron, you touched on it earlier. Why are they fighting so hard? Because they love that power and that authority that they have. And they're going to lose a lot of that under common law, and the authority and the power is going to go back to the folks. I think this terrifies them. I think it terrifies them that they're not going to quote unquote have the control. And then the second part of that is people are going to be coming for these scoundrels that violated their rights. Look at Cuomo. How many people in nursing homes died because of that guy? He's one of the biggest mass murderers in the whole entire country. What's he doing? He's walking around minding his own business pretty much. This has all got to change, Ron. It's a big mountain to climb. It's a really, really big mountain to climb. Would you agree?
And boy, you are absolutely right. We didn't get in this mess overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. But we had better make a decision about which direction that we want to go. And I'm telling you, I could talk about subject here all day about this kind of stuff. But the thing of it is that we have to get control of our government. And as long as it's a corporate government, and it is no longer a corporate government, that ceased. The corporation was dissolved the 4th of July of 2020. So the corporation's gone. And the people in Washington don't want to admit it. They're just trucking along like the American people won't know, so they don't have to worry about it. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, we do know. And your time period is coming to an end. But that's why they've been trying to shut Trump up. The thing that he's done to help the American people is astounding. And I don't care whether a person is a Republican or Democrat. If he obeys his constitutional oath and he does things for the betterment of the country and the people, then in essence, I'll support him to the hilt. But when you have the radical government that make their own laws, and they immune themselves from any prosecution, they're not above prosecution. And they write their own insurance policy, and they get their own retirement at the same rate as though they were in office, even though they were there one term. What are we doing? And we sit back and we do nothing about it.
Well,
the people have the power. People have power. You know, there's a scripture in my Bible says, never was a lion so vicious as an ungodly man with power. And we need to get back to a moral base in our country, because that's what our Constitution was founded on.
Yeah, look at some of the
moral people.
Look at some of the kings
because
of Israel.
Then you're willing to obey. Yeah, you're willing to obey a law. Law is to bring peace, not disruption and chaos. Statutes and codes bring chaos, and that's what we're having to deal with. And when you get people in government that are pushing the chaos and creating additional chaos, boy, I mean to tell you, here we are, folks, today.
Well, the practical question sometimes that is sent to me, you know, so people send questions and ask me about my opinion on things, and I'm not the expert on it. That's why I'm going to ask someone like yourself. How do we, if we, under common law, of course, we know that the Federal Reserve is a private company. The IRS is, I believe, under the common law, is going to be abolished. There'll be no more IRS because it's unlawful for them to tax you like they do. Most people, like you said, aren't taxpayers. I guess the practical question is, Ron, how do we pay our bills in this country under a common law if there is no taxation and all these, you know, the fees and the fines and all this stuff goes away? Not all of it, but a large majority of it goes away, and people aren't under the burden of taxation anymore, or property taxes. How is the government going to have income, or, you know, have funds to be able to operate in that scenario? There's got to be a provision, a constitutional provision set up for them to be able to still bring in money to, you know, operate services. I mean, if the snow falls, someone's got to pay for the driver of the truck to get in the plow and plow the streets, unless each individual person gets together and, you know, with their trucks and does that, but that's not likely going to happen. So there still are some services that are going to be necessary, of course, even under common law. How are those funded, Ron?
They're very simple, Jim. I just addressed that issue a little while ago. When you reduce the size of government, you reduce the cost, don't you?
Yes, you would think.
In other words, if you've got 1,000 people working for you, you have to be able to pay those 1,000 people. What if you got 10 people working for you? Changes the number of your outcome or your need of income of which to pay for that, isn't it?
Right, but you still have to pay for it.
The United States makes money in foreign trade. They make money in foreign trade. They make money through excise taxes. And the very fact that the government has the right to print money, okay, or to coin money, gold and silver. The government has the constitutional authority to create the money that it takes to run the government. But it takes moral people to manage that and leave the American people alone, other than there are legitimate taxes. But property tax isn't one of them, and income tax isn't one of them. There's a guy here 4 or 5 years ago was offering $300,000 to anyone that could prove that we're obligated to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Now, that man was not stupid.
No.
He understood the law, and you and I are not taxpayers unless you volunteer, like the city of Dallas versus Mitchell case.
Yeah, that's my friend Peyton that did that.
We create a lot of our own detriment.
Yeah.
We create a lot of our own detriment out of ignorance.
Well, what about the state of Montana or Oregon? Right? They can't print money. They're not allowed to print money like the federal government can. How are they going to, is it with trade? Is it with opening up the timber, and we send timber out, and we send natural resources, and then other, like Oregon pays Montana a fee for their timber, even though I know Oregon's got its own timber, probably more than Montana, or as much anyway, but that's not the point. Other places. So that's how we make money in Montana. We export our resources to other states, and they pay us for that. Is that accurate?
That is correct. The resources God gave us for a purpose, and resources in timber and land is not a god. God gave man dominion over all of the land and the entire earth, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea and the land. And we've got a mentality of worshiping mountains and timbers like they're a holy being. That stuff's got to stop. You know, in the state of Oregon, until 1967, they didn't have hardly any property tax because the money to run each and every one of the western counties in Oregon were predicated upon the basis of the revenues that were generated from the harvesting and timber. We grow more timber trees than we ever harvest, and they're dying on the stump because they're not being harvested.
It's true.
Timber is a crop.
Yep.
It's not a god, it's a crop. And then the mining on the eastern part of the state of Oregon created revenue for people there and promoted the businesses, and people contribute to government. That's how government originally was designed to be. We, the people, are the ones to contribute to it. And when they found out people were willing to do it, well, let's just get greedy and let's start taking it from them, let alone what they give us. Because then the people control government. But you let it run rampant like it's done, and we wonder why we're in the mess we're in. The people have the power. When are we going to wake up to that fact?
Well, we have a sheriff here in Montana, in Cascade County. Sheriff Jesse Slaughter has been on my show. I think he was on here about a week or 10 days ago or so. For 2021, Ron, and I know this is probably going to please you very much, he is mandating one of his deputies, I think more than one, at least one deputy, to go to the individual schools in his county and teach the Constitution to the students. He has implemented a program to, and it's sad. It's great on one hand, Ron, that he's doing that and he's taking the bull by the horns. But it's sad on the other hand that the sheriff has to dispatch one of his deputies out to the school to teach the Constitution because the school's not doing it themselves. So that's a good and bad story. But overall, I think on balance, it's good because the ultimate, the result are that the students are going to learn about the Constitution. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. Let me share something with you and your listeners. And I pray to God that you hear me clearly on this. The philosophy of the schools today will be the philosophy of government tomorrow.
That's right. You're right.
Think about that a moment.
No, you're right.
And when you teach more, it's like in the Bible. It says, train up a child in Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 22. Train up a child in the way it should go, and when it is old, it will not depart. That education of our young children in our public schools is an absolute criminal shambles. We teach them everything but what they should know. And let me give you an example, if I may, and this won't take very long. We have a thing we call Pottsville here, and it's an old tractor club, and they bring all their old tractors, and they have a tractor pull, and it's a big flea market and all kinds of concession stands. And it's just one great, big, wonderful day. It's on Father's Day, Saturday, every June. And one of the high schools where my two children went to high school, called Hidden Valley High School, had a concession booth there. And I said, I'll support that because my kids went there. So I went over and I ordered a hamburger and a set and French fries and a Pepsi or a Coke or whatever it was. And I gave the young girl, who appeared to be in maturity, about a senior in high school. Pretty girl, just very attractive young girl. And somebody had unplugged the power to their cash register. And there were 2 or 3 people ahead of me that were having difficulty getting the right change. And when I walked up there and I told her what I ordered, she said, well, that'll be $6. So I hand her a $20 bill. She gives me $18 back, and she kept looking at this cash register to give her the number of change, or the amount of change that I'm to get back. And boy, she was frustrated and flustered. And I mean, she kept sliding my $20 bill, and she tried to pull the drawer open. She kept looking at the top. And so she gives me back $18. And I said, Miss, I said, that's not the, and I tried to be as kind and gentle as I could. I wasn't snapping at her or putting her down or anything. And so I gave her the $18 back. And I said, man, that's not the right amount. So she's flustered, and she keeps looking for this machine to tell her how much money to give me back. And so then finally she hands me $11. And I said, Miss, I said, that's not the right amount either. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, let's do this. I said, you give me $14 back. And I said, I'll be tickled to death with that. And she just gave this great big sigh. She did not know whether the $14 was the right amount of money or not. It's just that I got her out from underneath this pressure to try to figure out how much money to give me back. And I walked away from that thing, and I almost burst into tears. Here this girl, pretty and getting ready to had either graduated or getting ready to the next year, didn't know how to give me change back for a $6 bill out of a $20. And you find that everywhere. Kids can't spell. Even college students can't spell. The texting stuff that everybody's got on the bandwagon of that. Some of that stuff I can't even read. I don't know what they're trying to say. Our educational system needs a tremendous overhaul. And the state of Texas, the governor, told the Texas educational system, you cannot fund schools by property tax money. They understood it's unlawful to do that. We implemented in the state of Oregon here a lottery system about 30 years ago, give or take whatever it's actually been, on the basis that it would replace the property tax. It never reduced the people's property taxes one red dime or penny. Instead, they took the lottery money, which the state gets 50% of that. Then they take taxes out of the other half that the person wins, and the property taxes went up, and the lottery money went up. Those things we have to correct.
They did that in Michigan, back where I'm from. They had the same thing where they set up the lottery system to pay for the education system. That was supposed to be some of the proceeds, the majority of the proceeds, supposed to be plenty of money to pay for the education system. Then come around 10, 12 years into the program, we start hearing that the education system's running out of money. And people are like, how can it possibly be running out of money? They've got hundreds of millions of dollars in lottery funds over the last 10, 12 years. Oh, and then they had to come out and admit, yeah, we haven't been taking that money and putting it towards education. We've been spending it on other things. So they lie as a rule. They cheat. They fraud you. They con you. Ron, I say on my program all the time, this is one big con job. And once people realize that it's a con, the con can't continue. Once the con gets found out, the con man only operates effectively as long as the victim or the mark doesn't realize that there's a con being played on them. I think we're finally figuring out.
True.
We're figuring out in this country, Ron, that we've all been under a big con, and the con artists, which are the people in Congress, are scrambling right now because they realize it's just a matter of time before the whole entire con and this house of cards comes crumbling down, and their criminality is exposed to the public at large. Ron, do you think I'm on something with that line of thinking? You think I'm accurate?
You're absolutely correct. And you're going to see a massive amount of arrests if they follow through with what the game plan is. I got notice this morning that Pelosi was arrested. And there's a picture there of federal marshals escorting her out of the building. Now, exactly what building that is, I don't know, and I didn't have time to read much of it because of coming on your program here. But the point of it is that's what's going to have to be done. The people who are perpetrating all of this fraud and this treason need to be arrested, sent to Guantanamo Bay, and tried under a military tribunal, and if they're found guilty, are to be put to death. Now, that's a pretty cold, hard thing to say, but that's the law. Because look what's happening to our country. If you think it's going to get better by wishing it, it ain't happening.
No, wishing is not a very good long-term plan. Hoping and wishing is not a very good long-term plan. Ron, we're gonna open up the phone lines. If okay with you, we're gonna give out the phone number here. If you have any questions for Ron Gibson, and what I want to talk about, and I know we've talked about this before, Ron. I want to take the last part of the show, if we can, and talk about solutions. Now, the solution really is standing up and being heard and getting together with people in your community. I mean, that's the general overall solution. But things as far as, like, we've had Gene Pringle on the show, who I know is a colleague of yours. We have him on every alternate Friday, as you know. And he is given solutions like, when you go in there to fill out your first tax form, just check that you're exempt. Like, you have you have the right to do these things. People just don't know it. Let's open the phones first. 515-602-9732. 515-602-9732. You can see it on the center of the screen if you're watching the video portion of the show. Call in, and the rules of the phone line are as follows, and they're pretty simple. You don't have to agree with myself or Ron. That's okay. Just be respectful and don't use vulgarity, because we're not really a vulgar operation here. We don't use vulgarity. We're not that kind of, Ron and I are not those kind of guys. So otherwise, well, we have a call that's coming already right away. And then what we can do, Ron, is we'll see how the calls go, but we want to talk about, solutions. And I know one of the solutions is getting your land patent title. And I've held up the book. Let's do that before we take calls. Let's do that real quick. Let's give out, Ron, and I have your book up here. I'm showing it here in front of the put it in front of the camera again. People can get this book, and they can get all your other book and information. How can they find out about you, Ron? You want to give out your phone number here and your email address. And if you want to get this land patent book, I think you've got another one that's called You're Not a Slave, if I remember correctly. I think those are $40 a piece, I think, $30-$40 a piece. So, Ron, give out your email address or your phone number, or how people can get in contact with you if they want to get all the great material that you've put together over your many, many years of studying the Constitution.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. My phone number is 541-621-5548. And my email address is D as in David, RITECRG@hotmail.com. Dry with an I, tech with no H, RG@hotmail.com. And Jim, I need for you to correct the address. A lot of people have commented they've ordered books and they sent me a money order or a check or whatever, but I think you have an old address, and I want to correct that. And if you'd correct it on yours, it's 11. Pardon?
No, go ahead. No, shoot. Go ahead.
Yeah, my new address is 11 North, just an N with a period, Peach Street, like a fruit that you eat off a tree. Peach Street, Medford, Oregon, 97501. That's 11 North Peach Street, Medford, Oregon, 97501.
Okay, so Ron, when you say take it out, change the address, gee whiz, we've probably done 20 videos together. I've got a couple different playlists with all your stuff on it. Where, my friend, do you know what spot? Because there's just a voluminous amount of work that we've done together, and searching it down would be pretty difficult. Any idea where I want to change the address on?
I don't know that answer. People just tell me. I got the address, which was 815 North Central, Medford, Oregon, before, but they said I got it off of Northwest Liberty's website. So
Okay. All
I
right.
just, whatever, if you can change it, fine. If not, we'll deal with it. But I have a lot of people who are sending, and they get the check back because
I can
they're
change
getting
it.
the address off of
I just have to find it. I can change it, not a problem. I just have to find out where it's from. It may
Okay.
be under the explanation on one of the videos is likely where it's at, is what I would suspect, but I don't know for sure. I'll try to peruse those videos and see if the address is listed under there. It's probably where it's at, under one of your videos. Okay, we've got a couple calls here waiting on the line again, folks. 515-602-9732. 515-602-9732. Let's bring this caller on. Caller 417 area code. You're live on the air with Ron Gibson. Please state your first name and where you're calling from, please.
Yes, Ron. My name is Victor, and I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Missouri.
Hello, Victor from Pittsburgh, Missouri. Thanks for calling in.
And I used
Victor,
to live
pleasure
in Ashland, Oregon.
Oh,
when you mentioned Medford,
okay.
I was like, not too far away, in the Rogue Valley.
There you go. Yeah, it's about 14 miles away.
Yeah, beautiful country. I don't know what happened to it, though. It got really liberalized. When I was there, it was starting to get that way, but I graduated college, and then it was like, I can't believe what happened to Oregon since I left. So, ever since, I'll put it this way, ever since the Gulf War. That's when I left.
Well, Victor, how can I help you? What's your question?
Well, I have a question here. I'm really confused. Not confused, but I understand a lot of what I've heard so many different things, okay? As far as going back to the Constitution, creating the Constitution from scratch, to the thing, going just back to the roots of the Constitution, going back to the Bill of Rights, I mean back to the Declaration of Independence, and going back to the original Constitution without the other amendments being added, and then also or allowing some of the ones that were added up to a certain level, like I think the 14th Amendment or something like that, or 13th Amendment. But my understanding about the person to be your own person, okay? You know, like you manage your own island kind of thing. In the old days, when you used to buy land, you owned the land below the earth and above the earth, above your property. And so whatever you put on that property, whatever was below, if you dug a hole, you found some gold, that was yours to claim. If you made a claim for that gold, now they say, well, hey, you don't own the land below the earth. Someone else owns that land below the earth. So that's one question I have. And the other thing is, as far as like a person, I heard that we are still under a slave system because they took my birth certificate number, and because I was born in such a time, and they gave me a number, and they barred against my name, and my name is all spelled in capitals. If I had to spell it in small little letters, which is hard for me to read anyway, but I understand something like that to make a change over to the common law. Is that true?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and put you on hold. That's a really big answer right there, and I know Ron would probably feel the same way. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and put you on hold, Victor, and we're going to put you back on hold. Ron, talk if you can with us about the straw man, capital letters. What Victor's saying, I'm not really sure about the. I think depends if you get your land patent title, you do own all the property and everything underneath. I don't know. It depends upon the district that you're in. They may. The county may reserve rights to stuff underneath your property. I don't know. I guess that could probably be negotiated. What do you say to Victor, Ron?
Well, first of all, let's go back to his first part of his question, and that has to do with the land, about owning, the space above the land, the land and the subsurface Actually, it goes to the center of the earth. But that's what happened. Those were taken away, or attempted taken away, by virtue of the Administrative Procedures Act, when they redefined the definition of land and then called it real estate and made all these statutes and codes having to do with real estate. And what happened, and it's important that you folks understand this, years ago, when you bought a piece of land that was under the original land patent, the seller gave that patent to the buyer. When that buyer then sold the land, he gave it to the buyer that's buying the land. In other words, that patent always accompanied the property. Well, after the Administrative Procedures Act came in, the last guy that bought the land under the land patent, one of the requirements under patent law, you have to have it recorded for it's called a public benefit, so that they know, so that there's not a conflict with somebody claiming land that they don't have a right to. When they took that land patent into the county recorder's office to be recorded, the county recorders kept that land patent and reissued back to the buyer a warranty deed and said, this is your title. A warranty deed is not a title. It's what we call in law a color of title. So therefore, all of those patents are sitting in an archive record in each one of the county recorder's offices there. So there's a provision in law to bring that original patent back forward to the present so-called owner under a warranty deed. And that's typified in a case called Hooper versus Scheimer and many other court cases. But that addresses that you have to have an unbroken chain of title. That's why your chain of title is so important to that. But they redefined land to be real estate. And so therefore, there's a maximum in law that goes like this. One can only claim jurisdiction over that which one creates. So they wanted to get control of the land. So they redefined the land to real estate and claimed that they had authority over it. And then they pass all these statutes and codes that claim you can't do this, you have to pay taxes, and on and on and on it goes. That's kind of in a Reader's Digest version of how that whole process happened. And I have a process that brings that land patent forward legitimately from the original patent, because on every patent is hereby granted to the undersigned, to their heirs, and assigns forever. That means that that patent right and that patent benefit never, ever goes away, nor does the title to that land, even though it's been redesignated, but that's unlawful. They can't redesignate land because it has a pre-existing patent on it that comes from the Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. And there are numerous protective covenants of that patent. So that's kind of it in a nutshell there. Now, to go back to the point about the straw man, the capital letter issue, that's what they did with your name as well. They created a new you. Your name is an upper and lowercase Christian name that you're born with. But because they wanted to get control over you, they reclassified you as a corporate entity. Anything with your capital name on it, all capital letters, you're considered to be a corporate entity subject to their jurisdiction. There's a way to get out of that. It's called revocation of signature for cause. And very simple process to do. But if you do not rebut that issue, then it stands because you haven't rebutted it. I did a program on Jim's radio station here several months back called The 12 Presumptions of the Court. And boy, I'm telling you, we got a lot of response to that. If I understand Jim correctly, I got emails and phone calls over that issue. And so I'm just saying that you have to be careful about what you allow in your life because getting back to the city of Dallas versus Mitchell case, you're only subject to government rules and regulations if you volunteer to be subject to that. So be careful what you agree to do.
Vince, does that
next question?
Vince, does that help answer?
Okay.
Does that help answer your question, Vince?
Well, that kind of the land thing, it confirms things that I thought. I always thought that you had the right as far as everything below you should be, and I knew that we were being scammed. But the other one was a little confusing because I heard it in variations, but there was one person that was very explicit about it. I'm sure, I don't know if you know her or not. Her name is April Lejeune.
I haven't. That name sounds familiar. Yeah, that name sounds familiar. I think I've seen a couple of her YouTube videos a while ago.
Right, and she supposedly goes into like real detail about the straw man thing, and she actually had set up her. She said the only thing, you got to keep your own books, kind of thing, because basically you become your own like your own creditor, your own. You don't have to pay for any kind of car insurance or any kind of insurance because all those things are set up that way, supposedly. Because is that correct?
Yeah. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump, Vince. But yeah, we're talking about. Thanks, Vince, for your phone call. We've got other callers that are waiting on the line. That is one of the things. Just to briefly touch on that, Ron, you haven't had a driver's license now in over 30 years. All that whole driver's license structure, the registration for your vehicle, all this stuff is corporate, it's like municipality. It's municipal. It's not what common law would dictate. As far as like if you want to go to the pond and fish and throw a line in the water, I shouldn't have to get permission as a free person from the government to go catch a fish, Ron. Is that all accurate?
That is correct. Driving, it means commercial. Traveling means you're in your freedom capacity to go to and fro. But when you are in commerce, in other words, somebody is paying you to drive, to haul people around, to haul a product around, freight up and down the highway, because the states have the right to have jurisdiction over commerce. So that's why all your vehicles are classified as a motor vehicle. That's a commercial term. That's a commercial definition, that you're doing that for hire. We have a man here in Oregon about 4 years ago that filed a lawsuit against the state of Oregon for back pay for being a driver. And he got a citation, and in the court hearing, he told the judge he wasn't a driver, and the judge said, "You are a driver." And so the guy asked him again. He said, "You're telling me, Your Honor, that I'm a driver? Is that what I'm hearing you say?" And the judge said, "Yes." He said, I'm telling you that you are a driver." So the guy says, "Okay." So anyway, after that, the following Monday, I think it was, he filed a claim for back wages for being a driver, clear back to the day that he got his driver's license at 16 years of age. And boy, the local court had a wall-eyed fit, and it was a horrendous amount of money, because he charged him for 24 hours a day, and he used in his court pleading was based upon the transcript from that traffic court issue that he went, and the judge told him that he was a driver. And he said, "Well, if I'm a driver, then I want paid for my driving, because that's commercial." So then the lower court ruled against him, so he sent it up to the appellate court, and it's been sitting there, for, as I understand it, for 3 or 4 years, 2 to 3 years now, I guess, because of the time limit, and they won't touch it, because, boy, what do we do with this? Because the lower court said he was a driver. Well, he's not a driver unless you're in commerce. That's what motor vehicle means. It's commercial. You go to the school or the grocery store, you're not in commerce there. Take your kids to school. You're not in commerce. Go on a vacation. You're not in commerce. So
again, another con that's been pulled on us. Let's go here to Oklahoma City for our next call. Oklahoma City, you're live on the air. Please state your first name.
Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for calling into the show today. Do you have a question for Ron?
Yes. You might know me. You interviewed me a while back. I was a man who lost his 4 children.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I'm having a
my
hard
question-
time hearing him, Jim.
No, he's going to come at the question right now. Go ahead, Jeremy.
My question is, how do I go about getting my basic human rights restored?
Can you elaborate that on in what situation or what context have they been beside? Are you talking about with your children? Is that what you're talking about? Is that the context that you're speaking of?
In general, I pretty much have no rights. Like, even if I try to carry a sign down the road, I could be arrested depending on what's on the sign. I have no rights whatsoever, not even the voting rights. I mean, how would I go about getting any rights at all?
We're going to go ahead and put you
Well,
on. Go ahead, Ron.
That is a wonderful question, and I appreciate you asking that, because every American is faced with that same dilemma. Under an administrative, dictatorial, tyrannical government that we've had in this country since 1946. And that is the fact. Well, let me take you through the steps about what not only you, but the people in your community need to do. You need to get together and organize. Now, sometimes that's a difficult thing to do because of people. You know, it's the old saying, if you find the perfect church, don't join it because you'll spoil it all. But a lot of people, they'll give you lip service, but they won't stand up and help. But what needs to be done has to start at the local level. Everybody wants to change it from the president down through Congress and the Senate, etc. That isn't the way that it's to work. What you do is you get a group of people together and you go to the county commissioners and you demand that they dissolve the county corporate charter. And that then reinstate your constitutional standing. And every one of your states have a guarantee of a republic form of government. So you have all the power in the world to make that claim and demand that you want the corporation dissolved because there's no constitutional basis for it, and reinstate your common law. Once you reinstate that common law, then no statutes or codes can be implemented or charged against you. You can go down the street with it, and you have the free right of speech, you have the free right of travel, da-da. But you got to get rid of the snake that's biting you, and that's the corporation.
So
and each county needs to do that. That would then force the state to relinquish its corporate charter. Now you're back to a sovereign state. Right now you have a territorial corporation, and the state has no sovereignty because it's not run by the people. It's run by the corporation.
So there's no magic, there's no silver bullet, there's no magic bullet or no one solution fits all, other than everyone has to come together collectively and stand up and say, we're just not going to put up with this any longer. If enough people did that, Ron, things would change pretty quickly. Is that sort of kind of where you're going?
Well, yeah, but you don't have to have every single person
right
in the county to do that. If you had 20% of the county that went to the county commissioners or supervisor, depending upon what you call them in your particular area, on a thing, you can put a horrendous amount of pressure on them. They have no choice because the people are voicing their will. That's what we're not doing, folks. We're not standing up and voicing our will. We complain like crazy. We point fingers like crazy, but we don't stand up and say, wait a minute. You know, my Bible says expose sin right where it's at. And this corporation thing is as wretched as it gets. because it strips you of your constitutional protected rights. You don't get a right from the Constitution. The Constitution protects our inalienable rights. In other words, our God-given rights. That's what common law is God's law. God wants you to be free. And he says, I want you to be free and free indeed.
Jeremy,
So
does that help answer your question?
That's the answer.
Yeah, it did help, but I don't know if I can find that many people. Oklahoma's a pretty it's a pretty weird place.
Well,
you can claim it on your own without anybody else. You may find some resistance to it, but you have every lawful standing in the world, and that's your state constitution and the U.S. Constitution. Get that book and read it, and anytime somebody gets in your face, say, maybe you better go read this. Because if they violate that, now you can sue them on the basis of fiduciary or breach of fiduciary duty. See, every public servant has a fiduciary duty. And when they violate that by violating your rights, they are now liable. They are not immune from prosecution.
So if I have a court report that clearly states that one of the reasons my children was took because I did not attend church, I could sue them because I have evidence that they violated my First Amendment?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I have a court report that says part of the reason my children were taken was because I did not attend church and my thoughts on the church.
Oh, my golly. Now, what religion are you talking about?
Well, they never asked, but my thoughts on the church. What happened to me in church, I never went because of what happened to me. So to keep my children safe, I did not want them to go. So the CPS caseworker says Jeremy does not attend church, and this is his thoughts on the church, and that's part of the reason, and it's in the court report.
Yeah, that's Jeremy was on the show here. That's Jeremy. I think I have your phone number. We should probably reach back out and touch back again, you and I, and talk about this again, and maybe even have you back. But I just want to say one thing, Jeremy, before we let you go. We got another caller here. Ron talks about doing, you talked about you can't get enough people. But if you remember the old Mark Twain quote, in the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid will join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. So my point in bringing that up is you may only be one man right now, but as you continue, as you stand up, you're going to get others to stand up, and you're going to hopefully put a little bit of steel in their spine, and they'll be jumping on board to help assist you. Jeremy, thanks so much for calling in. We have other callers. We appreciate you, man. And
thank you.
You're welcome. Send me an email, or let's try to connect back again. Sorry for what you went through with your
All
children,
right,
man. Yep. You're welcome.
Bye.
Yeah, Ron. That's here. What you're seeing now, Ron, is they're canceling people from insurances because of supporting Trump. These organizations are pulling money from candidates that support Trump. It's basically they're trying to marginalize people and isolate them. And now you have Jeremy here saying that they took his children because he didn't attend the church services like the state thought he should. How in the world can there be a separation, quote unquote, of church and state, yet the state penalizes you for not going to church? It doesn't make sense to me, Ron. It's because criminals are running things. There's no other way to explain it except crooks have gotten in charge. We've been asleep at the wheel. We've been interested in the NFL and American Idol and award shows and boat trips on the weekend, and we've been doing all this stuff that has not really have any value, while the criminals have been usurping our rights and taking our rights from us in the open for decades and decades and decades. You have any comment on that, Ron, before we take another caller?
Well, here again, it's one of these issues to where we have to decide the kind of life that we want to live, and are we willing to protect it? And that really is what it boils down to, because if you're not willing to defend that, then in essence, It's interesting. The federal courts have said in numerous cases, and I do an awful lot of law research in my business, but the court said, and I quote, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. And that boils down to the very fact, and that's true. Not that the rights are not available to you, but you don't recognize, at least clearly, what rights are being violated, nor do you have any idea how to protect your rights. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, we've got another caller here. Looks like calling from Wisconsin. Wisconsin, you are on the line. Please state your first name.
My name is Janice. Thank you so much, James and Ron, for taking my call. I really appreciate it. With your show. I have an active situation going on with an energy company that's trying to push eminent domain on a property that I purchased, and I was not notified before closing that this was possibly in the works. So for all the many reasons that, maybe I don't even need to go into of why I don't want this, the EMF field, the property devaluation, on and on. So I'm honestly terrified at this moment. And this energy company, this is in northern Wisconsin, is getting ready to put in their certification to the state of Wisconsin. And then my understanding is that people at, I believe it's the FCC, will decide which route they're submitting. I think maybe 3 or 4 routes. They'll decide which route they're going to pick. And so I am very scared because this is a new property for me, and I'm just moving in there. So I'm scrambling, and I honestly don't know what to do or how to fight this. And I sure would love help on this, Mr. Gibson, and insight, whatever you can tell me.
Okay, so let me recap here. It sounds like you just bought a piece. Sounds like she bought a piece of property. They're trying to pull the eminent domain on them. Now, Ron, here there is this energy company is a private company, and they're going to rule in favor of a private company over someone's private land. This doesn't sound like they can do that, Ron. Can you help this caller out here with the eminent domain issue?
Well, first of all, unless you have brought your land patent forward, the state, as far as the corporate statutes and codes, it's really hard to fight an eminent domain issue. That's one of the other reasons why I try to encourage people to bring their land patent forward. But let me ask this question. What is the purpose of the eminent domain? Is it for a utility power line? Is it for an underground gas line? Is it for a highway? What's the purpose of it?
Oh, I'm sorry, I left that out. These are for high voltage power lines, and these are not the regular power lines. These are the massive ones that are just they're metal, I believe, and towering. And this is a country road, and I think so far we have about 21 signatures against this. There's a possibility that these would go on either side of our road. So, it's basically a 50% shot that I'm going to end up with this.
Well, what you're sharing with me is the thing. You want to get as many signatures as you can. The other thing of it is, how far away from the power lines would be the nearest house or your home from the power line? Because there's a health issue involved here, and that's from the frequency that we have a miraculous brain, but it can be affected by high voltage intensity. So that's the reason for my question.
Thank you. I'm absolutely aware of the health issues. I have a science background, and so I pay attention to all of the chemicals in both our air and soil, and this is not something that I want. I would literally have to sell my property that I just bought it's a couple years away, I'm told, for construction to begin if they choose either route on my road. My driveway is about a quarter mile long, so my house is off the road, but part of the attraction for me of this property is the front is all tree lined, and that would wipe out probably 50% of the front of my trees because these are so massive. These power lines are so massive that they would be clearing an awful lot. There's other homeowners, however, that are closer to the road that do not want this on either side of the road.
Ron, do you think if you talk,
go ahead,
if the caller's saying 2 years away, then they're still falls well within the range of time necessary to get the land patent title established. Is that something that Ron? I don't want to certainly steal your thunder. Is that something that you recommend the caller would start getting involved, like do right away? At least gives. I don't know if they're going to be able to squash it, but at least that would give her some protection. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, it's a whole lot more lawful standing than with her warranty deed but yes, I would strongly recommend her bringing the patent forward, because under patent law, the eminent domain cannot be applied. Now, whether they're going to honor that or not, because they're crooks, but if they're lawful, which I doubt that they are, you cannot impose an eminent domain onto patented land without the owner's permission and acknowledgement of that attempt to do whatever that trust. See, eminent domain is really a trespass. They don't want to call it that, but that's what it is. It's a means of trespassing your rights and your property for the benefit of others. So,
caller, I'm going to give you Ron's number here, 541-621-5548. It's 541-621-5548. I'm not sure if you're following this on the video portion, but I held up.
I am.
Okay, I held up the book a couple of times, Ron's book about land patents. I think it's for what you receive. I think it's $40, Ron. Isn't that right? I think it's well worth that.
It's $45.
$45.
That includes the mailing.
Okay.
Yeah, $45.
And also, Ron, I think that you also, and we don't have you on the program here necessarily to sell your services. We really come on here to put out the information. But if people are interested, if this young lady's interested in talking to you about bringing your land patent title up, she can do that also when she calls you, right? You've done it in other states. It's not just in Oregon. You can do it in all the, because I know you've done it here in Montana for quite a few people.
Well, I enjoy doing this, and I want to help. And so, if we work there, one of the things, I do a lot of seminars, and Jim's well aware. He videoed my old seminar I did in Kalispell. But I tell people, and I think Jim will validate this, at that seminar, I mentioned to people that you need to stand up and let your voice or your view known. And I have all the time people come back and say, well, what can I do? I'm only one. And immediately my response to that, but you are one. And you and I make two. Another person, we make three. And another person make four. And you see where I'm going with that. And it's amazing the power that we have as people if we will join together. That's the reason, as you saw on the television, the issue, and there's a lot to it, and I don't want to get into it tonight, but what you saw on television about the so-called Trump supporters storming the Capitol building, that isn't what happened at all. So if you want to believe that lying television station, you can go ahead. But there was a definite attempt by a special military operation of which to storm that Capitol building and to capture as many laptop computers as they possibly could. With that, the Antifa saw that they were moving toward that. They joined in there. They had no business being a part of that. But it wasn't the Trump supporters that breached the the front of the Capitol building, and they of that they got 20 computers, and what they found is astounding. And I won't get into that there today, but
caller, thanks for calling, caller. We're going to go ahead and we got one more caller. We've only got about 4 minutes left on the show here, caller. Thanks for calling in. We're going to bring our next caller on the line here, and that'll probably be it for phone calls. I think we're going to be pretty much out of time here. But we have someone calling from, again, someone from, looks like from Wisconsin. Let's bring that caller on the line. Caller from Wisconsin, you're live on the air. Please state your first name.
Hi, is that me you're talking to?
That's you I'm talking to, my dear. You're correct.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, all right, thanks. All right. I didn't know if there was somebody else from Wisconsin. Hi, Ron. This is your friend Sue from Wisconsin. You helped me with my land patent a few months ago. I have a question
Yes, I
for
recognize your voice.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
There's two constitutions, correct? A constitution of the United States of America and a constitution for the United States of America, which is the true constitution, correct?
That is correct. One is for, the other one is of.
Where do we find a copy of the one for the United States of America? I've been looking. I've got copies of the other one of the United States of America, but I can't find the real one, the true one, copy of that. Of course, I'm sure it's being censored somehow, but...
Well, the last time that I looked, you could find it on the internet, and that may have been taken down. But what you can do is contact Washington, D.C. and request a copy of the original. It's called the Organic Constitution, and the of one is what they call Volume 1 Constitution. But I'm pretty sure that I have a copy of it. If you'd send me an email or give me a call, I'll go to my files and see if I can't. I think that I have it, but I'd have to go look to make sure. But I think that I have a copy of that.
Well, we're just out of time. We're running out of time here, caller. Thanks for calling in here from Wisconsin. Ron, on that note here, we've only got about 2 minutes left. Why don't you go ahead and give us out one more time? I'll give your phone number out here. It's 541-621-5548. 541-621-5548. And Ron is on Pacific time, so don't be calling him at 7 in the morning because I don't think he'll be happy for that. But if you're on the East Coast especially, Ron, why don't you go ahead and give us out your phone number there if you could. Not your phone number, but your email address one more time so people can send you some correspondence.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. It's D as in David, R as in Romeo, I as in ice cream, T as in Thomas, E as in Echo, C as in Charlie, R as in Ron, G as in Gibson, at hotmail.com.
Ron Gibson.
DRITECRG at hotmail.com.
Ron, always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. It's like a college education when you come on. And folks, I hope that you really understand that Ron's dishing out gold here. He's putting out gold. I hope you had a pen and a piece of paper and were taking down notes from Ron because it's all good stuff. I've never known Ron to be purposefully deceiving anybody or making up claims that aren't true or anything. I've known Ron for quite a few years now, and I give him my highest recommendation. And if he says something, it's 99.99% true. Is he fallible? Sure, we all are. But any mistakes that Ron would ever make was certainly not being purposeful.
90 seconds.
We're just running out of time, Ron. We just got 90 seconds left. Thanks so much for being on the broadcast here. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing before we have to wrap it up?
Well, I just thank you, and if anyone has any questions or whatever, email me, give me a phone call, whatever. And thank you for allowing me to be on your program.
Always a pleasure, Ron. 541-621-5548, and we'll speak soon, Ron. Thanks, brother.
You bet. Bye.
Okay, there
60 seconds.
There goes Ron Gibson, and we only have 60 seconds left, as you can see, folks. replay this video over again, take notes, and send it around to your friends, because the stuff that you're hearing on with Ron Gibson is just, it's absolute gold. Thanks so much for looking in. You can support our broadcast by going to northwestlibertynews.com, northwestlibertynews.com, criticaldisclosure.com, or montanadailygazette.com. Till next time, this is James White for Critical Disclosure Radio and Northwest Liberty News, saying bye now.
10 seconds.